Hello everyone, it's been a minute. So I just wanted to talk about some anime. A little bit of a different format than my last review. We'll try and keep it more of just like a wrap up of what I thought of the previous seasons. So I'm going to be talking about summer and fall 2020 anime. Alright, so let's go through some of the, we're going to start with summer, and just sort of go through the stuff that I didn't finish or didn't watch, and then go into the stuff that I did watch. So, summer 2020. Japan Sinks 2020, I didn't start, it's got some mixed reviews, I'm probably not going to watch that, and it got reviewed pretty poorly from most places I've seen, so probably not going to actually take the time to watch that one. Deca-Dence was interesting, so I watched the first 2 episodes. It seemed like a typical sci-fi, and then they show you the typical sci-fi where there's people fighting monsters in this moving city, and then on episode 2 you find out there's this giant plot twist and there's a lot more going on. And it seemed kind of interesting, but I didn't really feel inclined to keep watching it weekly, and I just haven't caught up on it yet. I might finish it eventually, but it's not too high on my list. Next up, Fire Force Season 2, nearly halfway through Season 2. It still seems pretty good, particularly like the fight scenes and animation. The story seems good so far as well, and it's kept me interested, but I'm not a huge shonen fan, so I sort of fell off on Fire Force a little bit. Not totally up to date, but I do plan on finishing this one at some point. Alright, on to the stuff I finished from summer 2020, from worst to best. We got Dokyuu Hentai HxEros, or Super Horny Heroes, would be a better name for it. I scored that one 4 out of 10. The show was pretty bad, and I barely finished it. So it's an ecchi action comedy. It's about aliens are invading Earth and feeding on humans' H energy, aka their sexual energy, and our main characters are heroes that fight off these monsters with a device that gives them superpowers, which are fueled by their sexual energy. So it's basically Power Rangers being powered by being horny on main. And both live airing versions of this show that I found were like really heavily censored, which is kind of ruins the point of an ecchi show, where ecchi is the main point of the show. The animation was bad, the dialogue was bad, the story was bad. Basically, the only good thing about it was the art, which was censored. I did, however, find like some of the Blu-ray episodes, which are uncensored, or I found the OVA, which was uncensored, and I think there are some of the full episodes that are uncensored out as well. But I watched the live airing version, and yeah, that's a 4 out of 10. I wouldn't recommend it. Next up is another pretty bad show from summer 2020, Peter Grill and the Philosopher's Time. Score that one a 5 out of 10. Another ecchi comedy about Peter Grill, who has just won the tournament, crowning him the strongest man in the world. With his new title, he expects to finally be accepted by his fiance's father, which of course he isn't. And what does come from this new title, though, as strongest man in the world, is a harem of women looking to get knocked up by him to produce strong offspring. And Peter says he wants to remain faithful to his fiancée, but he certainly does not put up much of a fight, that's for sure. And so some of the comedy is okay in this show, and there was an uncensored live airing version, which, you know, it gets a bonus point for that. And basically there's only those are the only 2 parts of the show that are a little better than the Hentai Heroes show we just talked about. The animation story are pretty bad, just like the previous show, and the art's actually pretty good. But yeah, if you want to watch a decent or good ecchi shows instead of Hentai Heroes, I suggest High School DxD instead. I've only watched like 4 episodes of High School DxD, already a billion times better. And instead of Peter Grill, of course, Interspecies Reviewers, which I have finished, which is great. Much better than Peter Grill, or Monster Musume. I haven't watched that one, but I've heard good things about it. So I'm sure those 2 would be much better options. Alright, next up, Uzaki-chan wants to hang out. I gave this one a 6 out of 10. It's a slice of life comedy about Uzaki, who's starting college and reunites with her senpai from high school, Shinichi. She then notices how he always seems to be alone and basically just starts bothering him to hang out with her. So the show obviously has similar vibes to shows like Umaru-chan or Takagi-san. I always have trouble saying that one, but I definitely didn't like Uzaki-chan as much as I liked those other two shows. I personally find Uzaki-chan to be rather annoying, which is kind of the point, but it's also not really my thing, so I just find it annoying. And also the interactions between the two main characters and the scenarios they're put in are kind of plain and boring to me. The show did grow on me a little as I watched it more, but even then I still wasn't super into it. And yeah, that's basically all I got to say about that. Next up, Rent a Girlfriend. Scored 7 out of 10, so this is your rom-com. It's about a guy who got dumped and felt really desperate, so he rented a girlfriend. And Kazuya ends up introducing his rent-a-girlfriend, Chizuru, to his family. Both Chizuru and Kazuya's grandparents now end up believing they're in a real relationship, and they end up faking this relationship for a long time. While continuing their fake relationship, Kazuya ends up completely falling for Chizuru. So this show is basically like a train wreck you can't look away from. It's very hard to stand the stupidity of Kazuya, and then there's Chizuru, who you want to root for and cheer on, but since you know Kazuya is the main male character in this story, that her story's gonna revolve around him as well. So you're stuck between dealing with this dumbass and rooting for this amazing girl in the show. And it's just kind of entertaining to see what sort of stupid thing is gonna play out next. And it's not like an amazing show, but I can't stop watching for all the just wanting to know the next stupid like scenario they're gonna be put in. And it's decently funny, so if the premise sounds interesting to you, I'd recommend it. It's a pretty decently funny, trashy show. Alright, next up, The Misfit of Demon King Academy. I scored this one a 7 out of 10. It's a fantasy action drama about a world where demons and humans were at war, and the Demon King sacrificed himself to end the conflict and be reborn 2,000 years later. We're following the story of the Demon King when he's reborn and attempting to take back his title as the rightful Demon King. So this show is a power fantasy on steroids kind of show. Like, the main character is so freaking overpowered, it's hilarious. The Demon King is reborn and is instantly more powerful than almost everyone around him, especially at the start of the show. Now, I'm not super into like every single power fantasy show there is, but there's some of them that I like for, good reasons. And this one I like for two in particular reasons. First, the just sheer ridiculousness of how powerful the Demon King is, to the point where it's just funny how absurd his powers are. And secondly, his attitude and his morals. The main character, he puts shitty people in their place, and he treats his allies and friends and family with respect. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. It's very satisfying to watch him put scum in their place and see conflicts escalate to colossal proportions. If you want an easy to watch power fantasy that you don't have to be too invested in, I'd recommend this. And finally, a show that I'm really excited to talk about, one that I've been really enjoying, and the hype train that basically caught everyone off guard when it was announced, the long-awaited Re:Zero Season 2. I scored this one a 9 out of 10. So, 3 long years after the airing of the massively popular Season 1, we finally got the announcement of Season 2 of Re:Zero. Now, when I say massively popular, I actually mean it, and even I was a bit surprised when I looked at it on Mail's popularity chart. With Season 1, it's still currently above like recent really popular shows like Demon Slayer, which made huge waves in 2019, and above one of the longest running shonens, One Piece. And Re:Zero Season 1 still currently sits right under Naruto Shippuden in popularity on Mail, which kind of blows my mind that Re:Zero is up there with these kinds of shows as well. It was surprising to me how popular Re:Zero was. I didn't realize it was that popular. So when Season 2 was announced, there was a lot of hype. And then the hype train crashed faster than you can say. How could they do this to Best Girl? 0 out of 10. Fuck this show. But jokes aside, even though I'm personally a little disappointed that Rem is going to be taking a nap for a little bit this season, the season was still amazing. And even though I gave Season 2, Part 1, the same rating as Season 1, I will say I personally think that Season 2 was a bit better in the sense that it made me more invested in the story as a whole. It's filling in some of the gaps and questions that everyone was left with from Season 1. Mainly, why does Subaru act the way he does? We finally get some backstory on our characters, and we get to meet some new characters to start to fill in more of the bigger picture of what's going on. And this season also does a great job of constantly keeping you on the edge of your seat. I always wanted to just watch the next episode right away, but I was watching it weekly, so yeah. And you just constantly want to know what's going to happen next. I'll say the plot didn't progress very much, which I think may have been sort of a low point or a dull point for other people compared to Season 1, but I mean, I think it's pretty understandable given the nature of Subaru's power and the position he's put in this season. It feels like he's fighting like 5 different battles all at once, and the relationships with his friends and allies seem to be balancing on like this razor thin high tension wire, and he says one wrong thing or there's one bad interaction and that wire snaps and everything goes to shit. So he's kind of put in this situation where he has to maneuver very perfectly if he doesn't want to sacrifice anyone. And with his relationship sort of hanging in the balance here, it feels like he has very few people to turn to for help. So for me, not only is it understandable that the plot doesn't seem to progress very much, but I'm still very much enjoying watching Subaru try to figure out the perfect solution and getting to learn more about the world and the characters. I'm not sure that there's much more that I have to say about it besides I think the show is amazing, and I think Season 2 meets the expectations that were set by Season 1 and builds off Season 1 to make the story as a whole even better. It just feels like there's a little something missing, which is stopping me from giving it a 10 out of 10, and that's likely because it was split into 2 parts. I feel like once we get to the end of all of Season 2, including Part 2, then I might be changing, the story as a whole to like a 10 out of 10, depending how the rest of Part 2 goes. Alright, and since we're going chronological, on to Fall 2020. This is going to be much less exciting. Re:Zero was my highlight for this video. But looking at Fall 2020, holy shit did I put a lot of shows on this list for Fall 2020, and holy shit were a lot of them garbage. So I barely watched anything from Fall 2020, and I only fully completed 2 shows. Okay, real quick, I think it's going to be on this side of the screen. Here's the stuff I'm realistically never going to watch. So, stuff I still plan on watching or finishing eventually will be Burn the Witch, Higurashi, Sport Climbing Girls. I feel like rock climbing, that I was so into it, and I feel obligated to watch the show, even though after watching the preview of the show, I don't really want to watch it anymore, but I feel kind of obligated to now. Wandering Witch, The Journey of Elena, Jose, The Tiger and the Fish, that's a movie there. I'll probably watch that still. And of course, I'm gonna watch Demon Slayer as soon as English subs are available for the movie. Alright, on to the shows that I partially watched. So, Akudama Drive, what I watched so far, it's a pretty solid show. It's got those cyberpunk vibes, and it's probably better than the actual game release of Cyberpunk 2077 was. But yeah, it's a solid show, and if you like those cyberpunk kind of vibes, I think it might be something you'd enjoy. I've liked it so far, I just haven't been in the mood to finish it really. Alright, next up, The Day I Became a God. I'll probably finish this, but I got kind of bored after the first 3 episodes, and based on its lower score, and I haven't really been hearing reviews about it at all, except for like maybe some people being disappointed by it. And I'm not sure I really want to commit to the 9 other episodes if it's not going to be getting better, which is kind of a shame. I thought it had potential. I thought, the premise sounded like it could make for a great story, and the animation looked really nice, so a little bit disappointed that it didn't really hook me and that it's not getting good reviews. I might finish it, we'll see. Okay, next, Jujutsu Kaisen. So I've watched a few episodes of this, I think like 8 episodes, and it's a solid shonen for sure. Like, shonen fans, you'll love this shit. And I'm not a super big shonen fan, so I haven't been keeping up with it weekly, but I will give credit where credit is due, and the animation is up there with some of the best I've ever seen in anything I've watched personally. And it has a pretty interesting story that capitalizes on the shonen formula very well, and it does so in a way that feels original and fresh, but you still get that familiar shonen feeling. So shonen fans, definitely, this is probably going to be anime of the year for a lot of people, and it's definitely a solid show. It's just, not something I'm personally super into. And then Fire Force we already talked about, but that season was continuing into the fall, I suppose. I still saw it on the list. So yep, Fire Force is still Fire Force, so I'll probably finish it. And then onto the 2 shows that I did finish. First, Adachi and Shimamura. So I gave this one a 7 out of 10. It's a shoujo-ai about 2 girls meeting while skipping class. They grow closer together as friends, while one of them, we as the viewer can see, grows much stronger feelings for the other girl than just friendship, but the character is afraid to show it to the other. And overall, it was a cute show. It was fairly average. It wasn't like amazing or anything, but it was a cute show and I enjoyed it. And I enjoy shoujo-ai, so it's a 7 out of 10 for me. And if you like shoujo-ai, I would recommend it, because I don't think there's a whole lot of anime for that genre to begin with, so it was a decently cute show and I'd recommend it. And finally, the last show I'm going to be talking about for today, TONIKAWA Over the Moon for You. I gave this one a 7 out of 10. It seems to be a bit lower than the popular opinion, but I thought it was alright. And this is a story about a boy who's, very smart, studious, doing well in school, basically to kind of prove people wrong because his parents named him NASA. And he's like, you know what, I'm going to make people respect me by being super smart and doing well in life. And one day while he's walking home from school, or walking home from something, he sees a girl across the street, and entranced by her beauty, he attempts to cross the street and is nearly killed by a truck. But the girl he was staring at was able to jump in and somehow save his life. And while they still both get hit by the truck, neither of them die, but they suffered pretty bad injuries. And he then, she walks away and says, you should get in an ambulance, and he, chases her down while he can barely stand and confesses to her, and says she'll accept his confession under the condition that they get married. And he says yes to that, and then she disappears for about a year, before turning up one day at his door with a marriage certificate. And that's sort of how we start off episode 1 there. It was for sure quite the absurd setup, but something I hadn't seen before in anime, so I was intrigued to watch and see how it played out. And I mean, that particular scenario didn't really resonate as something I thought I would want to watch. It just seemed oddly interesting, so I wanted to watch just to see how it'd play out. There's also the mystery behind the main girl. Sorry if I screw up this name. I think it's Tsukasa, which her character seems to be tied to Japanese folklore. The tale of the bamboo cutter. It's also sometimes referred to as the tale of Princess Kaguya. And if you watch Kaguya-sama Lover's War, they actually kind of shortly went over this. They sort of shortly explained this folklore tale in Season 2, actually. So to give a quick, super simplified summary of this tale, the beautiful Kaguya was on Earth, but she has to return to the moon, and she leaves behind an elixir of immortality for her suitor. And throughout the show of TONIKAWA, they heavily show some sort of connection between Tsukasa and the moon, and as well as heavily implying that she's personally seen places and people from hundreds of years ago, sort of hinting at maybe she has immortality or has, been time traveling or not aging in some way. And the mystery behind her backstory or her past, combined with the wholesome romance elements, are what kept me watching, and especially that mystery element. I personally really want to know what her backstory actually is. So yeah, it was a nice wholesome show, pretty decent, a nice casual watch, so I'd recommend it if you want a wholesome romance show to watch. And yeah, that's all the shows I wanted to talk about today, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys all have a good rest of your day or night. Peace.